Hey everyone, welcome to the Get Your Life Together Girl podcast, the ultimate blueprint to self-love and inner peace. I'm your host, Danielle Van. As a cognitive behavioral therapist, a life coach, meditation teacher, and author, I've spent my life studying and learning from the stories that make us human. It's my passion and goal to help you shift your mindset and create a lifelong revolution. Have you ever had those moments? Simple moments that tend to ruin your day. We all have them. It's a matter of how we connect to them and what we want to do with them once the emotional rise has started. In today's one-on-one deep dive, we're looking at a simple tool that I've created called the growth factor. I'm going to walk you through really evaluating how your moments can impact other people and how you can look at each individual situation and decide what you're going to give your thought process to and how much growth you want to occur in the negative. So let's not waste another moment. The Get Your Life Together Girl podcast starts right now. How's your day been? How about the week? How about last week? It's been interesting over the last few days. I've seen lots of people in my office, and there's been one sentence that keeps coming up for me, and I knew I had to share it with you because, as I have mentioned many times over, when something becomes a theme, it means that many people are moving through the same thing at the same time. Why does that happen? I don't really know, other than sometimes there's just universal scenes and themes of things that are happening to us collectively. And what I really want to talk about today is how to get out of letting something small or something that doesn't carry a lot of weight long-term, so short-term discomfort, allowing that thing to ruin your day, to take you down, and to get you into a space that you just simply are not okay. It is so difficult when we are in experiences that just drain us. And that drain is felt in so many areas of our lives, and it can start with such a small thing. So let's talk about how to get out of it, and let's talk about what to do. And I want to hand over this tool that I personally created called the growth factor. It's sort of a checklist of what to look for in moments that you know you are dysregulated, or in moments where you're questioning your reaction or questioning the value of the moment. As for that sentence that keeps being said in a variation of itself is, the energy that breaks you has the power to be the energy that repairs you. It's really interesting as we're working through something. A lot of times people will say, oh my gosh, this came to mind, or this perspective was opened up by this one thing. And at first it felt so negative, but then things changed and it became a positive. The energy that had the power to break you is the same energy that has the power to restore you, to renew you. So let's talk about all things. So we've all had those experiences where something small happens and we have an emotional response. And it's so big that it has a 6-time factor to it. And what does that mean? So I'm going to use a really silly example, but I want you to understand that the rule of 6 is so powerful. And maybe you experienced it today and you didn't even realize it. But if you step back, you can go, oh my gosh, that's what happened to me, or that's what happened last week, or whatever. So the rule of 6, let's say you're at the grocery store and it's super busy. You're in a hurry. They didn't have what you were looking for, and you get something that's similar, but it's not exactly what you wanted. So you're a little bit cross because the energy of the place is just not what you had expected or what you needed. And you get up to the checkout and say the clerk is unnecessarily rude. This is number 1 in the sequence of events in this rule of 6. The environment that you are connecting to in the moment is the mood of the clerk and the rudeness that's happening. And maybe you're not in the best mood. And all of a sudden, there's this whoosh of emotional connection. This tells the brain to be reactive. So maybe you're rude back, or maybe you start slamming things around in the cart and you're just frustrated. And your reaction in the moment is bigger than warranted, but you have absorbed this experience. So as you're leaving, number 2 in our sequence has already occurred, which is your response. You were short, you were annoyed, you were rude, whatever the response is, there's been an emotional response. So you leave the store, you get in the car, and let's say number 3 happens in the sequence and someone cuts you off. You're already heightened. You're already emotional. You're already upset. And now sequence number 4 occurs because you even greater respond now. You were just in the store, there was a rude interaction, you're heightened, and now let's say you cuss someone out, you flip them off, you honk the horn, you drive aggressively, whatever. And let's say this person is already heightened because they're late and they're frustrated and they didn't mean to cut you off, but your aggression is so much that now they are responding to your heightened aggression. So remember, energy matches energy. So what was low level 5 minutes ago is now mid-level because of the way you're responding. So in this now, this person gets to their destination and they're short and rude and emotionally reactive to someone else. So now we have 4 people involved. Ourselves, the clerk at the store, which was the original person, the original action provider, the person that cut you off, and the person that they interact with. So this one moment that was, say, 20 minutes ago has now leaked and spread across 4 people. That person that was the recipient of that sequence, number 4, now has to deal with other people. They pick this up and have to carry it on and say they are then rude to someone else. That's number 5. Number 6 in the rule of 6 is you get to your destination and say you're frustrated, your day started off awful, you're stomping around, you're throwing things down, and everyone within your path of this energy is absorbing what's happening. One small moment has now infiltrated a ton of people. Let's say someone has a feeling that things are going really bad for them. They have heightened anxiety, or somebody's in the throes of losing their relationship, or say someone's parent has just passed. Whatever it is, they have this emotional baseline that's dysregulated, and your small moment is going to trigger that moment. And we have this trickle down effect that is so nasty and so hard to deal with. When, had we not connected with the original moment, sequence number 1, that first step, things would be different. Go back to that same sentence. The energy that broke you can be the energy that renews you. So we have all these things that happen, the trickle, and we have to figure out how we want to get out of it the majority of the time. What it all comes down to is how we connect to the moment. What's happening right then, say in sequence number 1, had literally nothing to do with us. We have no idea why the grocery shop clerk was so upset or why she was rude. We don't know what's going on in her life or what had happened 5 seconds before, or if she just isn't generally a pleasant person. But when we take ownership of it is when the mass effect happens and that energy breaks us. And yet we can use it to fix what's happening within. So let's do that. So let's talk about what would happen if we just practice being present. I don't know how many times I've said that. I don't know how many times I've preached it here or in private session or any speech I've ever given. And it really is about what's happening. Was the first act, the first sequence about me? I have to tell you, the majority of times that things happen and we get in our heads and we take ownership of stuff, we think that this is all about us. But seriously, most people do not connect to us in that way. Most people are not thinking about you as much as we want to think that they are. And most people don't even have awareness enough to know that they impacted you. And yet you're over here in your head, hurting yourself, creating this ache in your chest that there is definitely something wrong with me. Is it about you? Is everything about you? Have you taken over someone else's feelings? In this sequence of things, yes, 100%. If you are present and mindful, you're going to go to that moment, say in the grocery store line, and be like, wow, you're in a bad mood. Or I hope your day is better. How are you today? I hope your day is better from here on out. Whatever it is, you offer grace instead of heightened ownership. Is the moment about you? If you're not present, it's super easy to take on other people's emotions because you don't have a read on what's happening within you. And if you don't have a read on what's happening within you, you're more apt to take on the environment. But if I'm mindful, hey, I know that I'm a little stressed because the store didn't have what I needed, and I'm going to try to make this work until perhaps after work, and then I'll go find that thing. This will be okay. I'm not going to take myself down. And if I'm not going to do that, if I'm mindful and present, I don't have 6 other people having an experience with me and they don't even know my name. But they have been impacted by me because I impacted someone else and they impacted that person and they impacted the next person. And it all comes back to me. I had a situation this past week in our personal life that I'm looking at, trying to trace back where the problem started. And when I looked at it, I thought, this is where the problem always is. Many times I've thought that it was me, but when I start looking at it and tuning in, I know where to put responsibility. And that is the most important part of being present and mindful, is that we don't take ownership. We give ourselves grace for maybe having a little bit of heightened emotion, but not letting it completely take us down. Let's talk about tuning into that emotion. If you are a regular listener here, or you follow me on Instagram, even on TikTok, I've talked about understanding your personal definition of your emotions. If you have an understanding of your emotions, tuning inward in these moments of chain reaction, the moment that the energy is owning you instead of you owning it, and you have a good understanding of what your definition is, it's easier to disconnect. When you tune in, you can ask yourself, does this emotion feel good? I know what it means, so does it feel good? Is it how I want to feel? Is this moment worthy of my response? Half of the shit that we respond to does not deserve a response. I said it that way because I need you to understand so many low-level things become high-level things because we're just in it. We don't know our emotional definitions. We don't understand how things are making us feel. We refuse to actually feel. And when we refuse to feel, guess what happens? The feeling owns us. Let's talk really quickly about feelings and what it does in our brain. So anytime our brain really notices that we're having a feeling, it recognizes that that feeling needs to have some attention put to it. And anytime we have that experience, our amygdala begins to shut down. Our amygdala is responsible for the logic, for our logical thinking. So what I'm saying to you is this: if you are heightened in your emotions, your logic is shut down. It is not in service. We are not getting anything from it. It isn't until we get down to just the facts, like you've heard me say a million times, and we begin to look at our growth test. We know our definitions. We get out of the emotional response. Does the logic kick back in? Logic and emotional responses do not hold space together. I want you to think about that. How many times have you been told or have you said to someone, stop, you're being irrational? And the answer is, yeah, I am, because that's the way my brain works, right? So think about that. If somebody's having a massive reaction and you're telling them to calm down, think logically, what is wrong with you? All of those things don't help because logic isn't within reach. That's really important because when we tell ourselves, hey, is this how I want to feel? We're asking a logical question, and our brain has one or two choices. One, get back into that logical frame of thinking, or two, heighten the emotion and say, this isn't working, and freak out. Okay? Keeping that cycle of emotion going. A lot of people who are my overthinkers, my people who have lots of anxiety, those people who succumb to stress really easily, people who have high levels of trauma, people who have that inner critic that they never ever quiet, are much more likely to have a deeper, higher, more explosive emotional response. Their emotions are much more king, so ruling, than anything else. And we want to get into a place of center. That's what a growth mindset is. You've heard that term. It's everywhere over social media. It's anywhere if you do any Google searches at all. But a growth mindset is that middle point of thinking between emotions and logic. And this is where our best self shows up. It's the place that we have regulation, we have control, we have understanding. It's that place that the minor inconveniences of life don't show up so big, so bad, so bold. And so let's talk about that growth test that I've been kind of teasing you with this whole time. Again, it is something that I created and it's very, very simple, but it's not what you think it is. When we hear the word growth, we often think positive. And in this way, I am using growth as a negative. So in this growth test, what we're talking about is examining our moments, that sequence of events, let's use that as our moment, and deciding how much growth does this thing have within it, the growth test. I'm in the experience, say I'm number 4 in our sequence, or 5, or even 6, and I'm feeling this heightened frustration. I know that it doesn't feel good. I can have the power within myself to 1, pause, be mindful, 2, check in with what I'm feeling, deciding what that definition is and how I'm going to use it, and then I'm going to test it. This feeling that I'm having, this emotional response, 1, is it worth it? And 2, what do I want to do with it? Okay, so growth as a negative here. If I am going to give power to my emotions, I am allowing the growth to occur. If I know that my amygdala shuts down, so logic is no longer within my reach, I am giving full power to the emotion to grow and do with it what it will, right? So here are some test questions to determine the growth of your moments. This is how we don't allow the slippery slope to impact us all day long. Remember what I said in the beginning as the sentence that keeps coming up. The energy that broke you is the same energy that can repair you. Here are the questions. 1, what is this moment worth? Now, at face value, that question doesn't have very much behind it. So I want you to go to worst case scenario. I know, this seems so counter to every single thing I've taught you or we've talked about. I've brought experts on. Doesn't matter. It's so counter, but I want you to go to worst case scenario. What is this moment worth? What I mean is, if I bring this energy into a space, say with my spouse, and I've already been fighting with them, what do you think is likely to occur? Is there some explosion that's waiting to happen? Am I borrowing trouble by creating an experience that didn't have to be because I'm heightened and logic is gone? What is the growth factor? What is the moment worth? Is a grocery clerk that you may or may not see again ever worth a 4-day fight that is likely to ensue? Now, if you're fighting that long, call me. We're going to have some work to do. In all seriousness, what is this moment worth? The next question is this how I want to feel? We've already evaluated the emotions. We've asked ourselves that question, but here we're looking at it from a different angle, because if we know that the moment isn't worth it, we have to meet the other side of the feeling part from there. Like, if this isn't worth it to me, is this really how I want to feel? What do I need to do with the emotion to make it different? Do I need to realize that it maybe wasn't personal, that maybe I'm taking ownership of what doesn't belong to me? Do I need to look at maybe feeling differently in the moment, realizing that there was a lot of stacked events that caused the experience and it wasn't exactly what I connected to? It was literally just a moment. Is this how I want to feel? The third question is, what in the moment is within my control? You've heard people talk about that when it comes to stress and anxiety. And when we are heightened in our emotions, we have anxiety and stress within it, right? So we have a lot that's going on. The minute our cortisol spikes up, that's that stress hormone, and our body is flooded with it, there's a lot that happens in the nervous system and in the organs. So the more stress cortisol we have going through our body, our liver will dump more sugar into the body. So we are literally physically, mentally, and emotionally impacting the self. Is a moment that is simple worth all of this damage? Is this moment worth it? Is this moment within my control? I can't control how other people show up in the world. Period. I can't control how other people try to impact me. That's the big thing. I can't control how other people try is the big word, to impact me. What I can control is my response. I can control my emotions. I can control my tongue. I can control my head. I can control all of these things around me, regardless if I can't control the people, the place, or the event. You know, a lot of times the people who are most resilient in moments that should take them down are the people who practice this understanding every single day. The small, little things, don't sweat the small stuff, right? Is their narrative, and they know that it's just not worth it. It's just not worth it. So what is in my control? If I let go of control, what is my growth factor? That's that next piece of circling back to what is this moment worth? If I just let my emotions run wild, if I let the moment carry me away into action that is not healthy, what is the growth factor now? Because if I've taken a moment and say, what is this moment worth? And I've twisted into a negative and I'm like, that SOB is going to pay and I don't like this, and that, and they're going to understand my perspective, we have grown big time. Is this how I want to feel? Yeah, I want revenge. We have another layer. That ball, that spear is getting bigger. What's in my control? Making them pay. We are now in this massive circle of negativity. What is within my growth factor at that point? The next question is, what am I hoping to get out of all of this? This is the most important question for me. What is my end goal? What am I looking for? When people in my personal life ask me to help them with their problems, the first thing I ask is, what's your end goal? What are you trying to get out of this? And often that's a very hard question to answer because most of the time it's met with, I just don't know. I have no idea. And in order to have a good path forward, we need to have an understanding of what we want the result to be, right? And there are some things that we leave to chance, but even that has some narrative as to what we hope to get out of it. Not everything can be left to chance. Some things do need an end marker out there. So if I have the growth factor and it's massive, it's so big I can't even wrap my arms around it, even if they're, stretched as far as they could go, what is it that I'm hoping to get out of it? Hopefully you can bring yourself back into that center space, back into that logical space and say, well, I'm really not trying to get anything out of it. I really just want it to end because you give yourself a path. Here's the other piece to all of this. Your brain loves a story. It's why I call it the storyteller. It loves to have all of the little pieces put in place so that the story is complete. It needs the box and the bow. Okay? And so if it doesn't have the box and the bow, it needs to fill in the gaps to be able to create a story. Those gaps are created from the perception that you have at the moment. It's created from old events that has similar feelings. It's created to the stories that you've told yourself, these truths, whether they're truths or not. And your brain begins to try to find justification for your feelings and the growth factor. The brain needs resolution. Your subconscious and conscious needs resolution. We drive ourselves crazy looking for resolution, but we can give ourselves resolution by changing the emotional connection in these moments. When we say, you know what, this isn't worth it to me. I don't want to spend 4 days fighting. I don't want to spend the whole day upset over what some girl who I've never even met before, who I will never see again, did, said, thought about. I don't want to think about the car that cut me off and made me honk or whatever. And I just don't think that this is worth it. The brain has resolution. Even if it's not physical resolution, the brain has resolution. And that's what it's seeking. It needs justification for the feelings. So you can stop all of this. You can stop having a bad day or the downslide moment or the growth factor that it's hard to get out of by just saying, I don't need anything from that. When you're in that space, you're in full logic. Knowing that things don't have to take you down and get you into a cycle is one of the biggest mental flexes. This is where people are said to be emotionally intelligent, right? Because they have the skill set to take themselves through the growth factor, through the growth test and say, you know what, this energy broke me for a second, but now I'm going to use it to repair me, to bring me back to center. And I don't have to do it. I choose not to. I choose to step off the spinning wheel. Giving yourself that expression, that understanding, breaks the moment, puts things back into perspective, and allows us to know that no matter what, there is always a choice. So I want you to think about that. The next time a little minor inconvenience comes up, the next time that you are in an experience that does not feel good, whether it's as simple as the grocery clerk or as big as everything feels like it's ending, understand that you can evaluate the moment by looking at the growth factor. What could possibly go wrong? What could possibly be worse? What could possibly take me down more than it already is? Is that what I want? The energy that broke you has the energy to repair you. I hope you understand that when you put these things into perspective and you begin to use this as a tool in your day-to-day life, it is the essential step into getting your life together. Thank you so much for listening to the Get Your Life Together Girl podcast. If you've enjoyed these tips for bettering your life and are seeking daily inspiration, please follow me on Instagram, TikTok, Clapper, YouTube, Threads. insight timer, or you can visit my website at getyourlifetogethergirl.com, where you'll find blogs, books, merch, tons of information, and classes and courses to help get you to where you want to be. And if you've enjoyed these tips, please feel free to share this episode with a family member or friend, as it helps us spread this message to those who need it. I want to once again thank you so much for being such a valuable part of this community. Until next time, be kind to yourself and others.